Hi, everybody.
Hi. So exciting. So today, this is Alicia. I just want to, well, let's see who's on right now. Can you guys raise your hands if you're up? You're in here? Let's see, awesome. All right, ladies, very fun. We're gonna wait for more people because I think like 38 or 36 people signed up or something like that. So while we're waiting for more people to attend before we start, I just wanted to share the background story of Alicia and how we met and how she joined the MDIBS team. So believe it or not, 15 years ago, I was a young associate at a.
We don't look old enough to be.
I know. So, well, let's just say 15 years ago, I was an associate. And when I was working, I think it was like 2004 or 2000, yeah, around 2003, 2004. So 14 years. Alicia was my dental assistant at the practice that I was working at. And when I left, we still kept in touch. That's the beauty of Facebook, right? That you can still keep in touch even though you're not working together. And Alicia moved up the ranks and became office manager. And then I went in my direction and I did my own thing. And so fast forward, MDIBS, Mommy Dentist and Business, launched about a year and a half ago. And just recently, it's been like 2 months already, right?
Three, yeah.
Okay, so 3 months ago, totally flies. 3 months ago, we needed to add another member to our team. And I really needed someone to help me with the webinars and podcasts. And Alicia decided to go in a different direction from being office manager. How long were you an office manager for?
10 years.
10 years. So
I don't look old enough for.
Right. So Alicia is coming from a background of 10 years office manager experience and wanted to take her career in a different direction. And I thought this is the perfect match because she knows the dental industry, she knows the dental background, and we've worked together before. So I just felt like this is a great opportunity for Alicia to come on board MDIBS and do the webinars. And then we thought this is such a great topic to share with everybody who wants to know about office managing and the secrets of survival and what they need to do and to have a really successful business. But I guess the first pearl that I wanted to share with you in this experience is that you never want to burn bridges. And even if you leave a place and you think you're never gonna work with the people again, or you're leaving a practice, the dental world is so small. The dental community really is 6 degrees, and you just never know when your paths will cross again. And it was good that we maintained a really good relationship, even though we weren't in the same office. And look where we are now. So with much further ado, I will let Alicia take over. And if anybody has questions, feel free to raise your hand or type in your questions. I believe at the bottom of your menu here, there is opportunity for you to ask questions, and then we can read them out loud and go over questions. All right.
I have a couple of slides prepared for this, so I am going to share those now. So these are my, I guess they're confessions, but they're my tips for sanity and success in your practice management. So today, there's always got to be some kind of little stop, doesn't there?
We're going to open up the slides here.
There we go. Let's try it this way. Okay. So today I'm going to talk about the things that I have found to be the most beneficial to my stress relief, because being an office manager is really rewarding, but can be very stressful, as we all know. So specifically, I am going to discuss the creation of an employee handbook and how to use it, achieving a work relationship with boundaries, curating a healthy office culture, and the tools that every manager needs to have in place in order to be most effective and most efficient. So, as Dr. Young said, who am I? Well, my name is Alicia, and I've been in the dental field for 15 years. I joined the MDIB team in September, and I've been brought on to manage our podcast, which you should be listening to. If you aren't listening to it already, you can find us on any one of the podcast listening platforms, and we have a new season coming soon, so stay tuned. And I'm also in charge of our webinar series. So this is our third webinar. I'm really excited to share with you. For 10 of the years that I was in the dental industry, I started by managing just the clinic, and then I moved into full practice management, and eventually I was managing two separate practices simultaneously. During that time of management, I managed during a construction project, and I did a new build out. So I have a lot of experience with a lot of stress in dental management. I study dental hygiene. I'm a certified dental assistant. I hold many expanded function certificates. And I am also, I was named top 5 office managers in the country by the American Academy of Dental Office Managers in 2016. But I'm also a working mom. So that's why I think this group is such a good fit for me. I'm the mom of 2 boys, Teddy and Archie, and they keep myself and my wonderful husband, Pete, very, very busy.
I think we have a raised hand, Alicia. I don't know if we can go down there. Let's see. Do we have a raised hand? I believe I saw one. Oh, it went down. Okay.
So,
can you go back to our slides?
Okay. There we go. So let's talk about all the tasks or job responsibilities assigned to an office manager. As you can see here, it is never ending, and it's inclusive of all of the departments in your practice. So on top of those tasks, we also hold the role of therapist, janitor, mechanic, the activities director, a magician, at least sometimes it feels that way, an advocate, and a teacher, just to name a few. So how does an office manager do it all? Simply, they don't. They are the master and the creator of the systems that, when effectively created and executed, they run on autopilot. So that's today what I'm going to kind of discuss with you is how to create these systems, how to put them in place, how to enforce them, and how it's going to make your life much easier. So the first step, tip or really step, because you'll see that what we're putting together here is essentially a plan, is this first tip is kind of what I think sets apart a high quality office manager from the rest. Knowledge of your clinic is so incredibly important in understanding how to better manage your team and your operations. It's going to take you a little bit of time to gather all of this information, but it will be well worth it. Spend some time in your clinic, get to know your procedures, how they are prepared, what the setups look like, document it, or ask a dental assistant to take some pictures for you of all your procedure setups. You'll see on my slide, I have a picture of like a random surgical setup. Observe these procedures and take notes. Understand why your doctor chooses to perform these procedures and who helps in completing these procedures and what materials are needed and what kind of time is needed. I also think it's really important as an office manager that you cross-train, learning to, go put on a lab coat and learn to turn over a chair or do some sterilization, because it's not only helpful to your team if they're running behind, but it sends a huge message to your team that we all work together, and the messages always come from the top. So if your leader is willing to step in and help when your team is struggling with something as minute as resetting the autoclave, it's going to trickle down and it's going to affect the other departments in your clinic.
I agree. I have to say that we try to cross-train our team because you don't want to rely on one person. What if that one person is sick? What if that one person, decides to quit at the last minute? You don't ever want to be in a position where you're like, oh my God, that person who knew how to do everything is gone. So you definitely want to cross-train, whether it's front and back or whether the office manager needs to step in, but there are huge benefits to cross training. So it is, like Alicia said, the message is sent that we are a team and everyone can cover to a certain degree.
So take all of that, take everything that you have observed and recorded in the clinic and put it down on paper, document it, make a clinic manual. So not only does this serve as your absolute reference, it's the correct way that the doctor wants things done, it's the way that the office has decided we're going to do things, but it also serves as a training manual for any new employees that come on, which now alleviates time from other dental assistants or even yourself having to sit one-on-one and work. It allows that new employee to take some initiative and self-train a little bit. Next, I think that everybody needs to take a look at their office culture. All of these tips are huge, and they really only work if everything is in homeostasis. So I was fortunate enough to work for several years for a wonderful dentist who believed in education. She firmly felt that everyone should learn as much as they can, and continuing education was almost never denied to anybody who found something they were interested in attending. I was encouraged and in turn encourage my team to constantly better themselves. So because of this, the team became obviously more proficient in tasks, but they also took a new sense of pride in their work. They felt very empowered, and we know that when we empower our team, we thrive. So investing in your team's education is a big deal because not just, they have these new skills and expanded functions can help make some of the schedule stresses lighter, but it can be productive too.
We have a raised hand. I was like, maybe we can see if somebody has a question. There it is, Sarah. I think Sarah raised her hand. Sarah, do you have a question for us? Sarah Vale, if you want to type in your question. No?
We'll come back.
We'll come back.
We'll check back.
Okay.
So you definitely want to, in addition to empowering your team with education, you also want to empower them via your team meetings. I think team meetings are really important. I know that you host regular team meetings here. It's something that when I did it, I set my schedule a year in advance. And we take our meetings very seriously. It's a set amount of time. Everybody must show up. You must bring your lunch. You must be prepared. And each member of my team was responsible for bringing a different part to the meeting. So one member of the team was responsible for gathering all of our surveys and sharing all of the different feedback we got from surveys. Another member would put together all the important dates between now and our next meeting date. We would share numbers. And the meetings were always run identical, always the same, very structured. So it not only gave the team, it gave them a little bit of added responsibility, and they were bringing some kind of content to the meeting. It wasn't just something that they were attending. It also provided an opportunity. It was almost an open forum where everybody could kind of share grievances if they had them, but really what are the issues, and here's some solutions, and we could talk about it as a team. Again, empowering your employees and making them feel like a valued part of what operations.
I would love to add to that. So in my monthly team meetings, that my office manager prepares, we have like a template that we print out, and the top, it starts with our previous month's numbers, like production, collection, if we made our goal, how many pro-fees we did, how many patients we saw. But before we even jump into that, I always start with someone reading my mission statement. So we always start the meeting with somebody reading off the Yummy Dental mission statement. And that to me is always a big deal because that mission statement is what we live by, what we stand by, what our practice philosophy is, and so that nobody can forget it. And we always start with that and then go into numbers. And every member of the team, like Alicia said, it's a mandatory meeting. But a month or 2 weeks before, my office manager will email everyone and say, okay, everyone send me what you're working on. And then we share it at the meeting. So we all kind of know what everyone's side projects are. So we discuss that. We'll discuss like what we had, briefly cover the previous month's stuff. And then we go over upcoming things or any issues that we need to talk about. So the monthly meeting needs to be set apart. Like I always do the first Thursday of every month, and everyone knows when it's going to be. Everyone knows what time it's at. And it's a way to regroup and recenter your team so that you're all operating on the same page.
Absolutely, I like that. Thursdays seem to be a good day for meetings.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And I also always like to, not always, but oftentimes I would throw in some kind of just a short icebreaker, a 5-10 minute icebreaker for something that's a little bit fun. It changes the pace of the meeting a little bit, and you learn something new about all of your coworkers. It does create a bonding activity, which is important. And then the last part of investing in the culture is consider taking your team's preferences we'll take it into consideration. So I worked with this wonderful doctor, and she would do a nice day out to say thank you to the staff. It was an unpaid day out of the office where she would treat us to whatever we wanted to do for the day. Except I had one employee who at the time was an hourly employee, and she ultimately needed a particular amount of hours to cover all of her monthly expenses. So for her, this thank you day became a really stressful situation. She didn't want to appear as ungrateful, but she also couldn't afford to miss the 8 hours in her day. So it wound up causing her a lot of stress. She needed to save a day off. And she said, ultimately, she would have just preferred to go into work that day. So not that that's going to be the case with everybody, but I think it's important that when doing something that is outside of regular operating hours, you take your team's preferences into consideration, what they want, what is going to make it easiest for them to attend, or what they're most interested in attending.
And additionally, going back to continuing education, CE classes, if your team is required to go to CE, it is required to pay them those hours. So I do know that there are doctors out there who don't want to pay for the salary, or like, you know, if they're paying them like $20 an hour. Oh, well, they're going to CE, so that's out of the office. No, it doesn't matter. If you are enforcing that they go to CE and you pay for the CE, they still get paid those working hours. FYI.
I didn't know that. That's good to know. We'll pop it in, see if we had any questions.
Any questions so far, guys? Nope. No questions. Okay.
Okay. The other thing. I just want to get back to our slides. So the other part of investing in your culture are the relationships between yourself and your team and yourself and the doctor. I think these points are all huge, but this is something that you kind of have to lay out immediately. And unfortunately, setting appropriate boundaries can be kind of hard to do after the lines have already been blurred. So let's be realistic. Keeping communication strictly to working hours is just not going to happen. And after hours communication can be a big cause of frustration for an employee. So a generic set of guidelines can look something like communication regarding work-related things are kept within the office during working hours or within perhaps the first hour after the office closes. The only type of communication that would break this guideline is obviously going to be some type of an emergency. Reports can wait, scheduling can wait. The dental industry really does have this reputation of having a high turnover, and burnout is one of a major factor. And I think being on the clock or handling work issues around the clock is something that will cause a big burnout with your employees, whether you're the manager speaking to the employees or you're the manager always answering to the doctor. Either way, there have to be some kind of clear set boundaries that work for everybody involved. Another thing my motto has always been in practicing is if you can make it work, do it. So if an employee needs the afternoon off to go watch something at their child's school, if I can make it work on my end, if I can find the coverage or if they can find the coverage, and we can make it work without causing stress or any kind of financial loss to the office, then we should do it. Because again, we're showing our employees that they're not just a number, that they are a valued member of our team and that we support their lives within the office and out of the office. So it's if you can make it happen, make it happen. Make sure that you always make your decisions based solely off of structure, like your employee handbook. This makes it a very unbiased decision. It's just you're following the rules that were determined by yourself or by the doctor and by the rest of the team if you have any of their input on the presentation or on the manual.
And one thing I want to add to that is that you don't want to make a decision when you're emotionally charged, nor do you want to address another team member when you are emotionally charged. You have to take the emotions out of it. You can't be efficient or constructive and give feedback if you're coming from a very emotionally charged position. And then you look unprofessional. So if you are going to sit someone down and give feedback, make sure you have it documented. And let's say it's an employee that's like constantly late, like always 10, 20 minutes late to the office. They are disheveled when they walk in, they clock in, but they have a Starbucks coffee in their hand. So they made some time to go to Starbucks before getting to work, but they can never make it to work on time. What do you do as the office manager? Do you A, go to your doctor and tell on them and make the doctor handle it? B, you sit them down maybe during lunch or when you're not seeing patients and have a conversation. Hopefully it is B. So you want to maybe print out the clock hours, maybe for 2 weeks, and show them, hey, in the past 2 weeks, you have been late 7 times. And they can't argue that they were late because you can show them their punch-in hours. So it's like you sit down Susie and say, Susie, these in the past 2 weeks are your punch-in hours. You have been late 7 times. You have signed a document, you signed the employee handbook that says that working hours, you clock in at a certain time and you signed that. So we did not trick you into working these hours. You had agreed to these hours. Can you please be on time? And that is not coming from an emotionally charged place. They can't wiggle their way out of it because you've printed out their hours. So you're matter of fact, and you just go on the facts. So I just wanted to put it out there that, you know, you don't want to be like, oh, say it again. You had time to go to Starbucks. Like, what is your problem? We work starting at 9 and you're here at 9:15. So that isn't really productive, and that tone isn't productive. And no matter how frustrated you are as a leader in the practice, whether you're an office manager or doctor, you should never go into a conversation with that kind of accusatory tone, because that will put that other person on defense and your communication will never match. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
It's a great way to say it, actually, that your communication will never match, because you're right. At that point now, it could appear that you're making decisions that are based off of emotion and not after facts and structure, as is presented in the employee handbook. You know, I tend to manage my clinic floor as a theater a little bit, where any place that a patient could be, the floor, the operatories, the sterilization, anywhere, that's all kind of theater floor, because let's face it, the dental industry is a little bit different in the sense that we're expected to provide quality health care, but we're also kind of expected to provide an experience to go along with it, which is very different from other medical fields. So because of that, whenever any of the employees are on the floor, you're on the floor and you are in character and you're putting on that experience. So the safe places would be a break room or a private office. So that's why I feel that it's important as a manager that you always kind of have an open door policy and that you keep an open mind, because there aren't a lot of safe places for employees to share their feelings. They have to kind of keep them in character when they're seeing patients, which is a majority of the day. And you'd be surprised by what might come into your office if you have an open door and an open mind. I found that a lot of employees sometimes just want to come in and vent. They're not looking for a real solution. They just want to get something off their chest. Some employees are looking for some kind of action to be taken by the doctor. They're looking for some kind of change to be made that they would like presented to the doctor. Or sometimes employees just kind of want to come in and talk to you about what might be going on in their life. And while this isn't the place for us to give advice on relationships, it is a place where I would want my employees to know that if you are interested in continuing education, or if you are interested in growing your family, that's something that we could talk about. The communication is very open. So when it comes time for that employee to go off to school, we're all really well prepared for it and covered. It's not a surprise. There are no secrets. I think that that's a really important part of building your relationship between employees and management. And the last thing that I wanted to say about relationships in the office is just to remember that sometimes it can be kind of lonely at the top, and you have to remember that although you want to be well liked, you're not always going to be well liked, and sometimes you have to give direction that employees aren't going to like, and sometimes you're going to eat lunch alone, and that's kind of part of the job, but it's rewarding. It's similar to being a parent. You have to give structure, and you're not really here to be anybody's friend.
Right, and I do tell that to my office managers, that there is a line, and if they are directly reporting to you, then you have to be their manager, and that management comes first before friendship. Now, if you go outside the practice and you go out and have drinks and you hang out with friends, that's a different story. But once you're in the office, they report to you. And so, again, you have to set clear boundaries. It's very rare and difficult to cross over that line back and forth. And like Alicia said, once that boundary has been crossed, or that line has been crossed, or the boundaries are fuzzy, it can cause discontentment in the office. And so one person always is like, oh, well, we were just hanging out the other night and having a drink, and now she's like, bossing me around. So again, just be careful about your relationships and how you act, because it can be lonely when you're by yourself. And I know that a lot of women want to be well liked, and a lot of doctors want to be liked, but it's not about making friends, and it's not about being liked. It's about being the boss and running an efficient practice. So just want to keep that in mind and make sure that people are, wary about that.
I find that you being less friendly with not that I wasn't friendly, but I wasn't friends. We weren't friends outside of the office. I think I actually got more respect from my employees, and they understood a little bit more about my position. But you're right, it is really hard to bounce back and forth. So being in management is just not a friend maker.
No, and you're not here to be best friends with everybody. That's what I tell my managers. You're not here to be everyone's best friend.
So this is like the biggest point, and I see this a lot, is eliminating your stress is to eliminate your problem employees. I cannot stress this enough. Don't waste time on problem employees.
We talk about this a lot in the group, actually. They are toxic to your environment. They're toxic to you. If it's that one dental assistant that every 3 to 6 months there's an issue, they do really well for 3 months, and then something comes up, and then they get back on track for 3 months, and then something happens. Or they're just toxic in general. So things that I think doctors are afraid to fire people. And as long as you document and you know your state laws, you really shouldn't have a problem with firing people. Documentation, and Alicia will talk about that, but from a doctor standpoint, it's very important to document, and document. So document facts if you can. So for example, the clocking in late, you can't argue with that. Those are strictly facts. If you have video footage, or if you have a phone call recording, or if you have a screenshot, like let's say in your appointment book, I run Dentrix, and let's say your front desk, the notes that she takes, she's like cussing and writing absurd notes. You should take a screenshot of that on your phone in case she goes in there and tries to erase it. So you want to make sure you have evidence, like hardcore proof of things, and then just identify that these people shouldn't be in your office. And a lot of times doctors are like, well, she's such a good dental assistant, I cannot live without her. Like, she knows how to hand my instruments, and she knows how to do this. But then it gets to the point where she walks around, she's like queen bee and untouchable, and she's putting other people down, but she knows that the doctor loves her, and so she can do whatever she wants. Well, that's gotta stop. And I'll let Alicia I'm kind of hijacking her slides.
Because I obviously feel strongly about it, that this is a huge factor. So we know that problem employees, they cause us stress, they cause us aggravation, and ultimately they cost us money. I mean, that's the bottom line. They can cause animosity amongst other employees, like you said, with the queen bee walking around. Now maybe your other employees aren't taking your management as seriously because you're not managing the one wild one. So why do the others have to be? Or why do the others have to be managed when the queen bee gets away with whatever she wants? So the worst part, I think, about having a problem employee is that they could be cancer to the office and that it could spread. And now you go from having one problem employee to like 4 problem employees.
And from a doctor's standpoint, you want to stand behind your office manager. I cannot stress that enough. If your problem employee is not rectifying the situation in working with the office manager and tries to go over the office manager and comes directly to you as the doctor needs to redirect the employee back to the office manager. There needs to be a clear roadmap in your employee handbook as to the structure of the organization. So you should have dotted lines, straight lines. You need to have what's called an organizational chart in your handbook and make it very clear who they report to. And if they think they can just skirt around the office manager and then they come to the doctor and then the doctor flip whatever the office manager just said, the office manager then now loses all credibility. And now all these employees are going to go straight to the doctor, which is not what you want. So when I have employees come to me and say, oh, I want to talk about my pay. Well, guess what? It's not our annual performance review. And we're not talking about that. And I go talk to your office manager. Or I get a text from an employee. Oh, well, my office manager sent me home. I want to talk to you. Nope, go talk to your office manager. The doctor cannot propel the situation. You really have to work as a team. It's a leadership team, the doctor and the office manager. And if you don't make that clear as a doctor, then the staff has the green light to walk all over the office manager.
Totally. And so again, you have to, as a manager, now you have to look at yourself as you're in somewhat of this motherly role where you want to provide your team the tools to excel and also the structure and the disciplinary action to uphold the integrity of yourself in the practice. So for both of these plans, discipline and termination, I suggest you meet with a labor law attorney for your state because they can advise you on all the appropriate protocol. Or if you create a plan, run it over with an attorney. I met with a labor attorney. I think it was free of charge too. It didn't even cost anything. And he just said, yes, what you're doing is lawful. And that would be the correct way to protect yourself from wrongful termination. Because you're right. A lot of doctors they're afraid either to lose the talent or they're afraid of this wrongful termination. And your team will function so much better without that poison within the office. So if you follow all the documented protocol for these types of issues and you report everything as stated in your termination policy, then you don't have any cause for concern. Rip the Band-Aid off and get rid of the problem before it multiplies. It only takes one employee to poison your entire well.
Amen.
Okay, so you'll notice that the last 3 points I discussed all involve learning about your office and documenting it. So these are essentially the simple beginnings of an employee handbook. I can't believe how many offices I've seen don't have a handbook. That's crazy to me. It's like cooking without instruction.
Well, I do have to say that for the doctors that are in the MDIB's Facebook group, if you're not a paid member, you should, because as a paid member, you have access to the handbook that Alicia and I have created. It's kind of like a skeleton that you guys can use for your office to get started. So just wanted to throw out there, if you're thinking, we don't have a handbook, where do we get one or how do we make one? You can email Alicia afterwards and she can guide you in the right direction.
Absolutely. So you definitely want to, if you don't have a handbook, then you're you're inconsistently managing and you become a case-by-case type of professional. So take all your notes and get organized, compile them into sections and document them. Include all the things that we've talked about and put it on paper. besides an office manual helping you to decide how to manage manage issues within the office, it also acts as a trainer for your new employees, again, saving you time. So in your organization, get your team meetings scheduled in advance and stick to them. Document your onboarding routine, how you're going to bring on your new employees and what steps and tasks are involved in that. Document it all. I like it. Are you using any forms for your employee management? If you are, you can find excellent, or if you're not, you can find some excellent forms like Dr. Young said on our MDIB website as part of the paid member benefits. So print them. Keep them handy so that it's never difficult for you to follow through on what you have planned in your handbook. That was something that sometimes I would get caught up because I needed to write somebody up, but in order to do that, I had to go and find a form, then I had to print it, then I had to fit, none of that. Get all your forms, have them together in a file in your desk, next to your desk, by your computer, somewhere handy, so that whenever you need to document something, it's right there and ready to go. You won't miss anything. And then being a part of the MDIB team, I've also learned how to use the Google Drive and the Google Calendar, which has been a life changer. And I think maybe Madison's going to talk about that at some point.
Yeah, so Madison's our other team member, and she runs the social media and creative aspect of the team. And she will be running a mini series in January about social media and how to get organized, and then how to use these tools like Google Drive and Calendar to stay organized in your practice. So you don't want to miss that.
Stay tuned. That's going to be a good one. But so all of the other steps that we've talked about thus far are not going to be effective if you don't follow this step and write it down and document it. Just put it on paper, even if it's loose for now. And so the key to making all these other pieces work is accountability. You have to hold yourself accountable to these same tasks and requests that you've made of your team. Don't waste time that you spent documenting all these systems and not enforce them. If you already have an office manual, maybe set aside some time and review it. Make changes with the doctor that you think might be outdated or require change to better accommodate the team that you have now, as opposed to the team that you might have had when you were creating it. Host a team meeting so that you could go over your new manual. You give your employees time to ask questions about the manual if they have any concerns about it, and if they want to make any suggestions, and carefully consider their suggestions. And then with the doctor, publish your final copy. Have each employee sign that they have read and they understand all the policies that are within that copy. And then you have your handbook. So lastly, and what I think is most important in accountability, is to lead by example. My husband is also in management. He manages in a totally different industry, but he's a really nice sounding board for me in that we both were managing small teams of employees. And they now meet face-to-face in his industry with customers, so nobody ever comes dressed to work. They come in sweatpants and hats and t-shirts.
Well, that's their office culture, yeah.
Right, so he decided he wanted to kind of revamp that office culture. So silently, one day, he just came into work wearing nicer pants and a button-up shirt, no more hats. Within that same week, 4 different employees started coming in button-up shirts, no more hats. By the end of the month, their numbers had gone up significantly. Nobody was wearing sweatpants anymore, and he never had to say a word to anybody about it. All he did was change the clothes he was wearing. His employees took notice, they followed, and it changed the culture just by simply by being a leader. So, if you want your employees to take arrival time seriously, then you have to arrive on time and you have to be on time as a manager. I know that it's hard and that things happen, but if you want your employees to have good habits, you have to set those examples for them to follow. You have to manage these stressful situations that you come in with extreme care and thoughtful responses, like you said, no emotion, if you expect your employees to handle things within the clinic in the same manner.
Agreed. And, I just want to make sure that we're not going over time, which we're not, but I think that it's really important to know as an office manager what is in your handbook, okay? Because if you don't know what's in your handbook, then you can't run the office. So another example of what goes in there would be like your holiday pay, your bereavement, sick pay or pay time off, vacation hours, all those things. Like, I know that sounds like HR, but then you need to put in there how they should be presentable, like for me, I don't like dark
or neon nail polish. It must be skin tone and professional. If you're on the clinic floor, hair must be tied back, cannot be in your face. You can't wear large dangly jewelry if you're in the back. You can't smell of perfume, nor can you smell of BO. So if somebody comes into work all disheveled, I tell them, look, this right here is not the look I hired. Go back to the manual, go home or whatever, or go freshen up or do what you need to, but this is not what I hired. So you just have to remember what is in your handbook. Another example is that in my handbook, if you are scheduled to work the day before or the day after a national holiday, so let's say 4th of July, if you are scheduled to work the 3rd of July and you're scheduled to work the 5th of July, and you call in saying that you're sick and you take either one of those days off, you will not be eligible for pay for 4th of July. So we had an issue last summer where 2 employees called my office manager the day after 4th of July and said they couldn't come because they were feeling ill or whatnot. And we said, fine, don't come. But then when we told them, hey, you're not getting paid for 4th of July, they were like, what do you mean? And we redirected them to the handbook. You signed it, you read it, it's in here. That is your responsibility now. Me as the owner and the office manager, it is not our responsibility to tell you and remind you of what the office handbook says. That is your responsibility. So if you have things set in place and systems in place, your employees, although they may try to get away with things, cannot, because everything is all in one. It's like having a Bible for the office. So I cannot stress enough how much you need this in your office. And if you have one, great. And again, revise it, check it every, make sure it's updated and make sure all your team members know about it.
Absolutely. I think the only downside to these tips today is that you kind of have to do all this collective work in order to achieve the stress relief. But I can assure you that once you complete these steps, you'll find that the stress is relieved permanently because you've put your system into place and now you're just letting the machine run on its own. It's going to give you, you're definitely going to find that this is the tool that is going to solve a majority of your issues. And then it gives you all that extra time to work on that giant list of tasks that I showed at the beginning, because that list of tasks isn't even included in all the stresses that we've talked about today. That's in addition to everything that we do as office managers. We wear too many hats. So many hats.
Well, the office manager is like the right hand of the doctor, right? So the doctor should be doing the doctor's work, which is seeing patients and doing clinical things and treating patients and letting the office manager run with it. And one thing I do want to tell the doctors who are watching or listening is that do not and try not to micromanage. Once you delegate to your office manager, let her do her job or let him do his job. Don't try to meddle. Don't try to get in there and be like, what are you doing? Did you do that? Did you finish that thing I told you to do like 2 minutes ago? If you have tasks, you want to schedule the task too. Prioritize, ask them, well, when is a deadline? When is it a feasible deadline for you? And then follow up. And there's only one doctor and one office manager and like maybe 2 to 5 employees or more. You can't always go back to them and check on them. You have to put that on the team member and say, okay, so in 2 days or 3 days or 1 week, you need to come back to me and follow up with me, because you can't sit there and chase everybody down. So set deadlines that are appropriate and make sure that they're held accountable and that they are coming to you, and give them a little bit of a leash, give them some room to do their job and try not to micromanage. Give them empowerment so that they can do their job to the best of their ability. And you have to trust them is what it comes down to, is that if you choose your team wisely and trust them, you should have less stress. So interview hard and manage easy. That is like the best piece of advice that I can give people today.
I love that. So as always, you can contact me at mdibpodcast@gmail.com, and that's mdibpodcast@gmail.com. That's where I live. And if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We have a ton of exciting deals, announcements, and events in the works, so you're going to want to stay up to date by following us. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us. I'll check for questions here in a second, but I wanted to remind everybody to visit our website, mommydibs.com, to view and register our upcoming webinars. We have a couple more scheduled, and they are really good. The content is, I'm excited about them.
We do. And then the ones that we did before, you can find them on YouTube. So if you didn't register or you missed it, you can always find them on YouTube.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.